forced him to message because I was like, oh, there's no way this guy's ever going to talk to me. But after all this time and effort, I know he's extremely busy, and he made some time to be here with us today. And it's not only
I was very like, wow. I, I, I'm not sure if anyone had actually done that before then of my work, so
y-
um, as reference. But
your work. I mean, to be honest, it's one of those things of like I remember I specifically had asked you because there's always an issue. Physical. I don't want to say physical, but like the traditional artist versus the
hmm
tattoo artist, and there are quite a few people. They find Pinterest or they find it's like, yeah, man. I admit that looking at a lot of your pieces over the years have kind of helped me get through those times where I'm looking at paintings or I'm working with somebody and they're just like, nah, man, that's you need to have it smooth, bro. It's gotta be like a baby's ass. I'm like, why are you looking at baby's asses?
oh, I mean, there are age. I didn't even know it was paint. I thought he was drawing all the texture.
Hmm.
It was because it was a printed flat image. It looked to me like I don't know. It didn't look like paint. 'Cause I don't think I'd that way before. Um, so when I used to, use his work as inspiration as a 13 or 14-year old, I would, I'd be drawing Indiana Jones and the sunset would have the around it, which later turned out to be brushstrokes. So I didn't know that. And I was drawing the brushstrokes at the time, trying to emulate what was going on the page. And then, years later, figured out that, you know, it's called gesso, and it's a it's a base a base paint that you can then paint over and draw on, and and it's all about finding out things as you go and learning as you go and picking things up and leaving things behind and experimentation and having fun. I think that's the key. If you're not having fun, there's really no point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because I think the biggest problem a lot of people tend to have is, Nick Frungay was on the a podcast about two back and
Mm.
had a lot of great things to say about you. But
Oh, he's very kind.
he
He's a
is,
great guy, Nick.
yeah,
I had the pleasure of meeting him when I was in LA a few years ago, and I got to have a lunch with him, um, and I had a nice chat. It was good to meet him.
yeah,
I love his work.
he's I mean outstanding. And I had looked at his artwork for years, just
Mm.
always captivated by the cover artist, and I saw
Uh-huh.
his stuff and I was like, man, I can't believe this is just I don't know who this guy is. And then
It's
years
like
later,
it's the same person. I mean, yeah, he's really taken aim, and his heart was leading him along a different path, and so he decided to take a break from the commercial work and concentrate on the sort of the fine art side of things and see how it goes. Which is, that's a bold thing to do. Personally, I get enough of a kick out of the freelance artwork that I do, um, and that's what inspired me to become an illustrator in the first place. So I've just continued to follow that dream. But for Nick, he obviously needs something more, and good on him for going for it and not giving up. And I think his work's just going from leaps to bounds with every month that goes by the looks of it.
yeah.
And he's really doing a great job. So
Now let me ask you this question, just from the conversation we had, it was like he had this transition where he was doing primarily like tribute art or cover art, and as well looking at Juice Struzan pieces, and was like, oh man, these are the best, these are what I want to do, and this is what I love and have fun doing.
mm,
But he eventually hit a point where he was like, you know what, it's not really where I'm at. And
yeah,
the converse I mean, artistically and personally. And so I had brought up with him the fact that we said, in every generation, let's just say 50 years, there are at least 3 to 5 artists that are going to captivate the audience in that demographic with their art. And Drew obviously is being one of them, and yourself was another one that we brought up. And it's like,
well,
how do you find a way to keep moving forward if you already have one or two masters at this craft who are doing it, do you are you basically going by their style, and how do you create your own? with with you, you've been able to take on your version of what you like to do for movie posters and for even just art in general, and
Mm.
you make it your own. How Nick's point of view was like, okay, I saw where I was going, and then I just realized I wanted to go somewhere else. What kind of kept you going and has kept you going since then, to be like, you know what, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to be? Because I think a lot of artists out there that do love the cover art, well, they're always worried about looking like someone else's style or this and that, rather than what you said, just have fun with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's kept me going really has been that I've never lost the passion for the movie poster, I suppose. And although like the passion for the movie poster has also led to other jobs along the way, like book covers and CD covers, and um, you know, oh, I can't think of any others now. But even well, other things, even just sketches for people. But the thing that really has kept me going is just the love for the poster, and that, and also that a lot of the posters that I do see um, don't. I could think they could be better, but there are some amazing posters out there. There's no question. But I just, for certain movies, I think they could carry an illustrated poster as opposed to um, a regular in-house studio poster. And that's kind of been a drive as well. So the fact that I've felt that there has been a need to carry, be one of the few or one of the many who are trying to carry the torch going forward and keeping it fresh, while keeping a toe in the water of the to kind of have that special feeling that that captivated a lot of us when we were the posters in the lobby. So it's one of those things that has been keeping me going, is that the fact that I think there's still. I mean, I even, for example, I talked to Drew Struzan many years ago, and we've kept in touch over the years. But one of the things I said to him was, it's going to make a comeback. It's going to make a comeback, and he's like, "No, it's not. It's dead." And I just, and even though he was quite pessimistic about the idea, I mean, it has made a comeback in the last, I don't know, 7 years or 8 years. It's made a impact in people. I mean, there's books being written, there's documentaries being made, there's poster people that make the posters, the companies. There's pop culture galleries that are getting people excited about art in movies again. So it's kind of a little revolution going on, really, and I'm lucky enough to have a small part in that, which is realizing a dream from a young 12, 13-year-old who just figured out one day what an illustrator was, to going, I want to do that. And then, this stumbling blocks have come in the way, and I've hurdled over them. Some of them took 10 years to hurdle over, but I did. And just, it's a long process, but um, it's it's a passion and it's a love, and it's got me here so far, and hopefully it'll continue. I just feel like I'm scratching the surface, if I'm honest. So,
Well, it's true what you said. It's like, for one thing, Drew. I've never met him in person, but it would be awesome to meet him in person one day. But
mm.
he
Oh, he's cool.
he seems like one of the most genuinely like nice people around. He's just very soft spoken, very polite. But
Mm.
he does have one of those kind of referring to him as in the documentary they had on Netflix. He kind of made a he kind of made a comment as well as to one of the actors. I forget what his name was from The Mist, but they were saying, nowadays you see people that are going to the movies, and the number one I'll always remember, I think it was Men First Class, and it
Yeah.
shows like Wolverine and all the characters, and it was just like terribly photoshopped
Mm.
together. And you're seeing just things, no disrespect to the artist, but it's just like it's so much easier for somebody to be like, okay, here's our main guy we're going to talk about. Here's these other characters, and as you said, it's one of those things that people always have that argument, like traditional art versus digital art, this versus that, and what really overlook is the fact that you genuinely have this art form, a true art form that a studio would graciously put the extra time. Like you're taking all this time to get all these people and all these actors and directors and so forth and so on, and you're putting
Hmm.
them in this movie, and then you're going to package it with like foil by
Yeah.
just photoshopping something, and as well as in encouraging the progressiveness of like digital art as well. Because I remember what you had said about being a kid, which we'll cover in a bit. You're looking at some of these paintings that Drew did, and when I started looking at stuff just like yours, I'm like, God damn it, how the hell did they do that glare? How did they do this? How did they do that? And then one of my friends would be like, oh, that's pencil. And then I see the strokes and I'm like, oh, duh, it's pencil. And then
Yeah.
one of my other friends goes, no, dude, that's acrylic. And I'm like, oh, duh, it's acrylic. Yeah, why didn't I
Yeah.
think of that? And someone goes, no, dude, no, 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 no. That's
But that
ink.
yeah, that's one of the exciting things. And that's one thing where I'm kind of reluctant to do any like step by step videos and stuff, because taking the mystery away of like how did someone do that is like it kind of it strips the magic away in a way of like um I understand like there are other artists that want to learn from each other and stuff, but um I've shared tips with people, and they've shared tips with me, and like how do you do that? And they're like, this is how I did it, and it happens. But to put something out there is kind of I've been kind of shying away from it a little. I've done a few little things, but kind of shy away from it a bit because I've got a friend who's actually a magician, and I love magic. I just love it to bits, and he's amazing. And so I'd be like just dumbfounded by what he does, and then he looks at my stuff and he's the same, because it's to him that's magic. Like to create something from nothing, and for it to be pleasing to the eye, and even be have some kind of story element or whatever is involved in a single image, whether it's technique or storytelling. And he found that to be in his eyes magic, and he calls me a magician, along with other artists, obviously, whose art he loves. But art and illustration to him is quite magic, and you know you don't get magicians giving away their tricks and their secrets. And not that it's a trick, but there are certain things that are you learn over the years to being being a commercial artist. You do have deadlines, and you do have to take a few like cut a few corners occasionally to get things done. I've there's been times when I've had to do an illustration in a day, um, and you can't do. Yeah, I couldn't physically do. You mean like Drew did it with the thing, right? But I, I don't think I could physically do a 30 by 40-inch illustration, hand painted in a day. It would just be um, very difficult
for
with the level of detail and everything.
for everyone that doesn't know what Paul's referencing, do you want to tell them, or should I tell them as far as the thing poster?
The thing story, yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, the
Yeah,
people listening
please.
to this podcast would probably know, but oh, it's famously known that when John Carpenter's movie The Thing was about to be released, they needed a poster, so they contacted Drew Struzan and then said, basically all they told him was, "Do you know the old movie The Thing?" And he's like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, we're doing a new version of that. We need a poster by tomorrow," and they approved it. And then he had to do the painting I think it probably was a bit more than a day, probably 24 to 48 hours. And when he finally did it, the guy came to pick the courier came to pick up the artwork, and the paint was still wet. That's how quick he had to do it. So yeah, that's the story of Drew Struzan meeting a very tight deadline. And today, it's one of the most beloved posters, film posters out there. Really, it's just a magical piece that is very ominous. Incidentally, the guy in the Parker, that's actually Drew. His wife took a picture of him in a Parker on his driveway. That was the reference. In the hot summer sun of California. That's magic for you, turning that into a snowy, crazy looking, possessed being for a movie poster. There you go.
Christopher Nimchan, who's on our live chat right now, goes, so Paul Shipper is a magician then, which is kind of funny and true. But going back to that, which will tie into the whole deadline thing, it's very true. It's like, I've never thought of it that way, that artists themselves are people, like, yourself included, but I really do look up to your work, but it's also just the way that you execute the work. And it is being like a magician. If you knew every secret out there that was just given to you and handed to you by whomever, the lackluster of that you're going to get from the tricks, so to speak, or it's no longer going to be magical to you. It's no longer going to be something. And it's so true. Like, if you thinking about it now, it is something where you kind of, like, I'm looking at your Superman piece right now.
Oh yeah.
And for the Man of Steel, and as I go through different photos for people on the live stream to see, Khan, there's Batman, there's Keith Sutherland. I can't say his name right, but you have all these pieces, and you're looking at it, and it really draws you in. But if you knew every little detail, then most people today, like, when they get the answers, especially in a digital, and they overlook it, and that's where you get the mysticism out of it. So, going with that to be said, do you feel that having deadlines, because it's kind of like nose to the grindstone, do you feel that kind of like hinders your ability to enjoy a piece because you have to get something done? Or do you feel that kind of puts you in the mood to, like, all right, let's get this done?
Yeah, I find deadlines quite helpful, to be honest, because if I'm doing a personal piece, which doesn't happen very often now, but work things sometimes if you're given too much time on something, and it's it's a famous saying that a piece of art is never finished, but there comes a point when you have to put your tools down and go, you know what, I think that's it. And then, it's down to the client to then tell you whether they think it's done yet and what they think. But generally, deadlines are a good thing. There's times when, I have a deadline, and I have a deadline for tomorrow, and I'm still not quite finished. So I'll be working through a bit later tonight to try and get it finished. But that job only came in on Friday, so it's like, and it's Sunday now. But just this weekend, I'll give you an example of, like, workload wise. From Friday, done, finished off a Blu-ray cover for Shout Factory. Worked up new compositions for an advertising campaign, and been working on something for Star Wars Celebration for Lucasfilm. And then this job I'm working on at the moment is for Netflix. So that's over like 3 days. And so, there are times when I like juggling jobs, to be honest, because when I have a few jobs on at the same time, getting feedback sometimes takes a few days. And if I didn't have any other jobs on, I'd kind of be twiddling my thumbs, really. So, while I'm waiting for feedback for one, I'm on to the next project, and then when that's to a certain point, I'll send it off for approval or for feedback, and then I'll be waiting again, so I'll carry on with the next project. And so I'm continually have 3 or 4 projects on the go if I'm lucky, that will keep me occupied, and sometimes working on them, or when a project first comes in, I generally don't do very much like sketching down ideas. I will look at the project and research it, and then think about it a lot. And so a lot of the work, like compositional work in the storytelling aspect, gets done in my head. And there's been times when I fell asleep and then dreamt about it, and then knew what I had to do the next day. Things like that happen. And then when I'm really stuck, I will put pencil to paper and start just sketching out ideas, just very rough thumbnails of like little round things for heads, and shapes for spaceships, for example, or squares, and just like text will go here, this will go there. Maybe fill a page of like 10 different ideas, and that sometimes gets things going if I need it to, but generally it's mostly done through procrastination.
So, excuse me, when you're given an average project from, let's just say, Netflix or Lucasfilm, are the deadlines, because most people, even myself included, would assume that there's an immense amount of planning that goes into a DVD release or into some kind of
Oh yeah.
project. So sometimes you hear it when like you said, you were given a project Friday and it's due today.
Yeah.
On average, do most projects kind of happen where, because it's almost like someone's like, oh shit, Paul, we forgot about Paul. We got to get
Yeah.
the cover art.
No, well, I think it is for a presentation, so it's they're classed as comps, or comprehensive studies of an idea to present to a client, and then so these aren't. I mean, they've got to look quite final, but they're not essentially that they may not be selected. It's that kind of thing. So they're like, they probably only found out about the job a few days before me. So it's kind of like they're just trying to make things look as good as they can and have as much variety. They may have like, I don't know, 10 or 20 different designs, and I'm doing 2 of them or helping them out with 2. So
So, on average, it's basically like you're doing concepts, and then they're having you be like, okay, well, let's see what we can get, and they have to pitch that to a team then.
yeah, that's one aspect of what I do.
And then the major pieces that you're doing are a little bit more planned out, a little bit more something that you can do for
yeah,
almost like a show, like you said, like a cover piece for a DVD or for a poster.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's kind of go back a little bit. Where does Paul grow up? Where does Paul start? Did you come out and all of a sudden you had a paintbrush in your hand? They're like, damn, that baby's talented.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. No, no, no. I was born in Manchester in the northwest of England,
Manchester, England.
back in 1976. It was the hottest summer, apparently, so my mum told me. And yeah, just grew up in the northwest of England most of my life. Um, went to we went to a few schools. We moved around a little bit around the area, so. And then one of my schools closed, so then after being there for 2.5 years, then I had to find another school. And went to art college. You kind of, I mean, I was probably known as the artist kind of person at school, and then I'd spend all my lunch breaks in the art department just drawing pictures. And then from there went to the local art college, which is called South Trafford, and then was there for 2 years, and then went to university in Manchester again. Stayed local. I didn't go around too much. I didn't like to do. I was still living at home. Actually, I didn't feel ready to move out at that time. So I went to university and did a BA, Bachelor of Arts degree in illustration with animation at the Manchester Metropolitan University for 3 years. Which, in hindsight, if I'm really honest, I already knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it didn't really lend itself to me. They were kind of trying to make fine artists, and I just wanted to be a commercial artist.
Could you just?
And
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
oh,
interrupt.
Karen,
What is the difference between a commercial artist and a what was the one you said?
I mean, the kind of work, really, this is the kind of work that I wanted to do. I was very much into entertainment, and to some of the tutors there, I was wanting to sell my soul to the devil in a way, whereas they were trying to promote the idea of a more modern approach. And I've always had my foot like back in time as well, in a way. I've always looked forward. I love technology and things that can do, but I've always had my my soul is always, or my heart is still in that romanticized era of when I was growing up and the things that influenced me and all those things. Um, so yeah, I mean, a good friend of mine. I put it this way: I didn't get a at university. I kind of did okay, but my one of my good friends, Alan Sanders, who's gone on to be quite a prolific illustrator with his style of work. Um, he got, I think he got top honors kind of thing, but he was like the real teacher's pet. Whereas I was quite disliked by my especially by my final tutor. He didn't like my kind of stuff. Um, and I tried, I did try something I really didn't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing what I really want to do right now. And the stuff like, for example, one in particular, there's one um, thing we had to do at university. We were given an assignment by our literature teacher, Bill Robb, and he basically said, right, and we've done all sorts of projects over that year, mind-numbingly not exciting. And then Bill Robb, who's the literature guy, said, right, I want you all to read this book. It's called Complicity by Ian Banks. And I've got to set you an assignment to the whole year, the whole class. And I was like, okay. And he said, yeah, I want you to design a film poster based. And I was like, no way. This is the first. And when it came down to it, everyone did their pieces and we had to put them all up and everyone had to look around at each other's. And then the tutors came in and my tutor went round. He didn't really take much notice of mine, but he had nice things to say about other people's. But then Bill Robb came in, who is an everyman. He's not an art tutor. He's a literature man. He's a big Ernest Hemingway fan, actually. But he went around the room and he looked closely at everything and then came back and we were all stood around and he said, you know what? There's only one piece here that resembles anything like a film poster to me, and that's Paul's. And that was a huge compliment because he was my future audience. He was he's like the general public kind of guy. He did no training, like art history training in any way really, and so that was who I wanted to. I wanted that kind of person to enjoy my work, and he just came out with it, and he thankfully said that, and it was a bit of a eureka moment in a way because when people tell you that something's not right enough times, it does chip away a little bit sometimes. And so it kind of reinforced the fact that actually this is exactly the sort of person I want. I don't really feel that, you should have to have to figure things. I want people to see something and instantly I like it or hate it or get some kind of emotional response from it without having to like ponder over it and go, wonder what it means. I would much rather have an instant kind of, wow, I want to see that movie or, that book. You know, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but geez, you do. I mean,
Everybody does.
yeah, I mean, I've bought books I've never read, but because I love the cover art. um, but yeah, so that there you go. There's a little um, story of my time at university.
So do you believe that, because you do hear this argument, and it's actually something, yet again, you're making a lot of revelations for me today. I'm going to go out and start dancing in the rain. Um, but, like you said, a lot of formal trained artists, in the sense of like classical art, not all, but a lot of them tend to always believe, when they see certain kind of cover art, like, oh, that's not really artist. It's a formula that just has to be recreated over and over. There's no thought,
Mm,
there's no deep meaning. And not to say that anyone who is in classical art or abstract or anything like that, not to say everyone is like that, but you do get your fair share.
mm,
And to hear it, like you said, you're not trying to necessarily impress the art critics, quote unquote, but
no,
like the everyman or every woman in this
yeah,
case.
that's
And,
right.
that's really cool. I mean, did you promptly sit up in front of the entire class and flip everybody off, or?
No, no, no. I just kind of humbly thanked him in a kind way. I just, it was just, yeah. There is one other time when, for example, the local newspaper, the Manchester Evening News, is quite a big newspaper for Manchester, is this, and they asked our department to come up with a new Christmas card for them, and so we all had to submit illustrations for that, and then they went off to be selected, and a week or so later, our tutor came out and said, "Well, they've selected which one they want, and you're not going to believe whose it is. They want Paul's." And there's another example of like that was another eureka moment for me because it's like, well, these people are the kind of people I want them to be able to appreciate the stuff, and they did, compared to, I mean, I don't know, 30 or 40 people in the class. It was nice. It was just another reaffirmation for me, and I mean, there's been many over my lifetime which has kept me on a path of because people have been very, very kind in their remarks, friends, family, people I don't know even, leaving comments, on social media, things like that. It's all it, we're artists and we do need our little ego stroked occasionally, in order to keep on the right path and to keep doing what we're doing. We have this built-in passion, but if you don't have an audience, sometimes you do need. Well, I do. I do when I finish a job, and the clients like it and they've approved it and it's all going ahead. When sometimes it's maybe a month or two before it's actually shown to the public. But when that moment comes, it's fulfilling to get reactive um, feedback on things from people that the people that it's aimed at, or the people that love that particular thing that you've illustrated, um, and for them to actually say, you did it. We really like what you did there because that's a very nice representation of what I love, or whatever it may be. I'm trying jabbering on now, but
No, no, no. Please do. It's interesting
um,
because, like, as much as I'm supposed to be in a conversation and asking you questions, I mean,
mm,
it's enthralling to hear this because, from my point of view, it's very true. I have no classical training. I've always wanted to attend classes, or in like a schooling for illustration, especially because I have such a huge love for, as you said, the cover art. And it's right. I judge every book by its cover. I mean, it sounds wrong, but that's how I determine, because sometimes I'll buy books that are like 40, $50, and I'm
Mm,
like, I don't care about the book. I care about that cover in specifically,
yeah,
and
yeah.
having it and learning from it. And so, listening to you talk about how you have these moments and how you're kind of assessing and taking here and there, it's very affirming of where you want to take things, because I've talked with a few other artists, on and off, about how, everybody always looks like, right now we're looking at your Doctor Strange
Mm,
pieces. I'm sorry, and these were used, for the film, weren't they not?
yeah,
Yeah.
they're official Doctor Strange art, yeah.
And there was a Marvel page I saw, and somebody had made a comment. This was, before the movie came out, and excuse me, and had said, "Oh, the art's really cool, but it looks like somebody took really bad photos. Like, as far as, they thought it was photoshopped, and they just put a bunch of like Instagram filters over it." And like,
Okay.
automatically I was like, I started going in. I was like, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" Like, all of a sudden, I will fucking murder you. And
I'll be interested to see which one that they meant by that.
well, it was the first one where you have, right where he finds the cloak of, levitation, I believe, and he's walking up the steps. You have, the bus shot from the side profile of
Oh
Benedict
yeah.
Cumberbatch, and it was funny because as I caught myself, because I'm not one of those people that goes online and you see stupid comments and you're like, oh my
Mm.
god, like, I just gotta say it, get it off my chest. But
Yeah, fair enough.
I saw it, and I literally was like, you know what? I go, this is the artist's Instagram. This is his page. He has a lot of great stuff. This is hand
Mm.
drawn, illustrated and everything. And there was, at least three or four other people who were artists as well. It was like, if you have no idea, like, they did the dirty work for me, because they were like, if you have no idea the photograph, then you're a fucking idiot. So,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where you kind of look at, like I said, the Doctor Strange piece, and you see not only the artistry behind it, but, like, the idea of telling a story through a cover, telling the idea of how you perceive things, because if you see, I think the best example I've ever heard, from a friend, was like, if you were to see Saving Private Ryan and you just saw a soldier standing up looking to the side,
Mm.
versus Fury, which you have, Brad Pitt over a tank's, cannon looking to the side. That doesn't really tell you much about the story. And
Mm.
he goes, but you're going to see it anyway. There's no reason that you're not going to see it. We're able to captivate a character, 1 to 5, 1 to 20. It doesn't matter how many you use. It's how you use that character. It's how
Mm.
you use that information to convey what this might be
Oh,
about.
it trying to source the images, whether the client supplies them or not, and then just it it's all to do with composition. Like really, it's all down to composition. So this, the aesthetics are secondary, really. I just I have the way I illustrate is very much in keeping with the look of Drew's work, because that's what excites me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's there's no easy way to say it. Um, so whereas I the compositions I would do, Drew wouldn't probably do. It would be completely different.
Right.
Um, but it's the compositions that tell the story, that the size of the images that you select, that you use, how you use them, color is important. There's so many elements, but top of the list is most probably composition, which is the hardest thing. Um, because once you know how to draw and paint, or whatever, however you do it, once you know that, it's like it's all to do with the subject. Like, what shall I paint? And if you don't have anything to paint, you might just, you need an idea, or you need a something that will drive an image, because really the act of painting is secondary once you know how to do it, and once you know how to make it pleasing to the eye and all those things. And once you've nailed that, then you can worry about composition.
It's very true because I have a friend. He's actually going to be on the podcast this week, and him and I have
Oh yeah.
talked about this. He's probably one of my, well, not probably, he definitely is one of my best friends, but like he's probably one of my yeah,
Maybe.
hum,
We'll see how the podcast goes.
you're right, fuck him. No, but my buddy Thomas is genuinely one of the main reasons why I kept on in art, and we've always kind of had these conversations because he's an outstanding illustrator, and he's an
Hmm.
outstanding person of like his composition is on point. I mean, every
Hmm.
single time he did a Goonies piece a while back, where he just did the one-eyed Willie skull, and then the jaw turned into the ship sailing off, and the kids off on the
Oh yeah, I think I
right there.
saw that.
Yeah, and it's outstanding how simple, but like it conveys a good
Mm,
message. But his application, a little bit, is still being formed. He's still learning how to apply color theory and value and so forth. But it's not because he can't do it. He's just, when we draw, this guy's composition's on point and his sketches on point. My sketches look like shit. You can't. Half the time, Harrison Ford looks like Clint Eastwood because I can't get the eyes right. But my application, as far as my colors or my ink work, has
mm,
is a little bit stronger. And you're completely on the nose of, like, it doesn't matter how well your application is if you don't have a strong foundation, and your foundation doesn't really go far if you cannot push it a little bit further with
yeah.
any application. But kind of going back to school, you've learned what you could. You started doing the newspaper. You got the AOK from the literary teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
But where did you carry on from there? Because there's got to be a point where you've hit from college and then in between to your
Mm.
career now. Where's Paul fall in between there?
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well. After I graduated from university, one of my good friends and myself graduated at the same time. We were like, well, we should go on a holiday somewhere. So we booked a holiday. We did the thing called Trek America, and we went over to the West Coast for 4 or 5 weeks, and with like 10 other people, camping out under the stars, doing various activities, lots of hiking and horse riding and canoeing and all these things. Staying at all the national parks. It was still probably to date the best holiday ever. The most wonderful experiences, ups and downs, the whole thing. But what happened was on the first day before the holiday started, we arrived in LA, which is where we started from. And I was like, we're in LA for a day. What should we do? And I had Drew Struzan's fax number because I'd faxed him like a few years prior when I was like, I don't know how old I was. It was my first year at college, so it would have been 1992. My math's terrible. I don't know how old I was. Anyway, I was quite young. And my tutor gave me this book. And it was sort of step-by-step graphics, and it was like a Bible because in the end, he actually gave it to me to show. I'm getting a bit off topic here, but
No, you're good.
he gave me this book because he my old art teacher, his name was is or it was, he passed away very sadly, John Warmisham, and he actually developed software for the Archimedes computer back in before anyone was really doing. This probably before Photoshop, and it was like creating art on a computer, 3-dimensional art, and so he was really into technology, and it's possibly where I've got it from. And he showed me this book, and it had like simulate oil paintings, like digital oil paintings, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I was flicking through it, and I swear I saw a Drew Struzan illustration. I was like, and I flicked again, and I couldn't see it. So I just said, do you mind if I borrow this for a few days? And he's like, yeah, take it. So I flicked through it and I found it, and it was a step by step of the 10th anniversary Star Wars artwork that Drew did.
Mhm.
And it was like, it kind of, there was a few things that I'd figured out over the years how he did things, but this kind of showed you from inception to the final product exactly what he did, and it was like the Holy Grail at the time. It was like, oh, it was like a gift from heaven. But the funny thing was, a couple of years later, I'd read it cover to cover, all the articles, which some of them did not interest me. But towards the back, there was an index of contributors, and Drew was in there, and he had his address, his phone number, his fax number. And I just thought, God, wouldn't it be funny if I just sent him a fax? My mum and dad had a fax. I was living at home. I was like, I must have been 15, 16. And so I wrote a fax to him, originally asking him, so how do I become a movie poster illustrator like you? It was a bit longer than that, if I'm honest. But, friends, and then came home, and there was a piece of paper on my bed. My mum put it there. It was a reply from Drew.
Oh wow.
And I was like, no way. It was unbelievable. And he was, just for him to take the time to get back to me was incredible. But he did go on to say how, the computer had taken all his work away, and he was the last of the great movie poster artists. So I don't think he said great, but I know he's great. But
Oh
he
yeah.
said he's the last of the movie poster artists, really, and there's no work really to go around. I think he even put like little things in, like Little Miss Muffet, sat on a computer, doing something, and it was like took all the work away, kind of thing. I can't remember a word for it, but one part that I've kept with me this whole time was this nugget of information, which was a quote from scripture, and in the words that you wrote, he said, "Keep knocking, and the door will be open to you." And so, ever since then, I just I've never really given up trying. Even when I worked, I had a full-time job, and I did my art in my spare time. I'd work through the night and then start work the next day. But yeah, I just never really given up. So that was great. Um, so getting back to what I did after university,
No, no,
I
that's
actually,
that's that's awesome.
I actually, I actually faxed Drew again and told him about our little adventure, on the West Coast. We're going to be coming over from England, and we've just graduated, and we're going on this trek around America, and we're going to be in LA for a day, and it would be wonderful if you were around. If I don't know, if I was being a bit cheeky, I suppose, just kind of like, I'm going to be in Los Angeles. It'd be wonderful to meet you if it's all possible. And so he replied and said, "It sounds wonderful what you're doing, and here's my number. Give me a call when you get to LA, and if I'm around, it'll be great to see you." So that was it. So the first day I arrived in LA, the moment I got to the hotel, I think probably before I even got to my room, I was on the phone to Drew, ringing him very nervously and waiting for an answer. And he was home. His wife answered and then put Drew on. Hearing his voice for the first time, I didn't even know what he was going to sound like. I've never seen an interview or anything at this time. Yeah, this was before the internet, really. I
Mm-hmm.
think really had kicked off. So, I was still using fax machines. I mean, I think we had email, but not many people had email, so you couldn't really email anybody. Um, so yeah, that very next day, I found a way to get to him because he basically said, "So, do you have a car?" And I was like, "No." He said, "Well, I don't know how you're going to get here then." I was like, "I will find a way, even if I have to walk. I will find a way." But yeah, my friend Richard and I just said to him, "Do you fancy coming?" He's like, "Yeah." and we went there for the day. We got in one of those taxis that's like a airport taxi, and it goes around like 20 different places. So it took ages to get there,
Ugh.
stopping off at different places because we had no money. We were just so broke, really. We just graduated from university. We didn't have much money, so we were trying to do everything as cheaply as possible. So we still had some money left for this holiday. So, so we could do things on the holiday too. So, anyway, finally got there and had the most amazing time with Drew in his studio, and it's a day I will never forget. Um, and he was so wonderful to talk to, and he gave me some great advice, and just hanging out with him. He was actually in the middle of a painting at the time, which was it was a limited edition print that came out for the Lost World.
Mm.
So it's got like the big T-Rex and the baby T-Rex,
Right.
and lots of like foliage around it. He was in the middle of that, but at the time he looked very different. He had a big red sun behind the T-Rex's head and things like that. But yeah, I had a great time there. I took my portfolio with me to show him, and I actually had done a painting for him to give to him, which was, in retrospect, was the most stupidest thing to do. But I just thought I'm gonna meet my hero, and I want to give him something. So I did a portrait of him, and I kind of wish I hadn't now. Like if I could go back in time and say, Paul, if you're gonna meet Drew Struz and paint a portrait of Drew to give to him, do something else. I don't know what, but something else. So very kind. I mean, I was 21, and he was flicking through my portfolio and having a look, and he said things like, "Oh, I can see you've had a good teacher," meaning himself. And I was like, "Well, I've studied your work quite a lot," and he said, when he was my age, he wasn't nearly as as good. He said, and I was like, "Whoa, that was incredible." But then again, I think I managed to leapfrog a little bit because I studied Drew's work so intently. I probably picked things up without knowing it, and stuff like that. But yeah, meeting Drew was wonderful. He was a very, very, very nice guy.
Now, from you when you first started university and graduating to that point when you met him, and then when you
Yeah,
I should say when you walked away from the experience.
yeah.
I guess without giving away the magic, so to speak, what was kind of one of the most important things that you learned or had like maybe a self realization about from kind of like having the idea of who you were inspired by, kind of understanding the person you were inspired by?
What, from meeting Drew?
Yeah, I guess like did you leave it being like, oh well, this is maybe some techniques I need to work on, or was it I have to
Well,
approach?
he didn't really share any knowledge in that way. It was very much, it was not about that. It wasn't like, here, I'll show you how I do my thing. It was nothing like that. It was just general talk about art and images and life, and
Mm.
just hanging out. It was more about hanging out. It wasn't. I mean, I'd have loved him to sat down and drawn with him or done something with him, but it wasn't. It was not about that. And so I didn't get anything like that from meeting him. I did get to see his wonderful studio, which is a huge inspiration. Um, the way he's got it all laid out, and the tools at his fingertips, and um, you know, that one day I hope to recreate. I'm not quite there yet, but one day. Um, and just meeting one of your heroes, which is so um, I it's hard to put in words really, because when you've looked up to what somebody's done for so many years, and then you get the opportunity to meet them, it can be uh, very daunting and incredibly exciting at the same time. And so you do kind of find yourself not really, you kind of on edge a little bit, so you don't relax the same, and so you're probably not quite as um I'm not that I'm articulate, but you're not as articulate when you're in the presence sometimes, because you are kind of like you're sort of pinching yourself the whole time, thinking, "Is this really happening?"
Mm-hmm.
And that's happened. I got the opportunity to meet Simon Pegg and J.J. Abrams and some of the cast of Star Trek at the Star Trek Beyond premiere in San Diego last year, and that was the same thing, because at the after party I got to meet them, and I was just like,
I've drawn, I've drawn this
you kind of
portrait.
like,
I've drawn this
yeah,
portrait of you. You're, oh no.
yeah. I did portraits of everyone, and but it is you're like, you kind of like, am I really here? Is this real? And you just kind of, you don't really. I didn't know what to say a lot of the time. I was just kind of dumbfounded, like, you can't believe you're there. I think if there's ever a chance it'll happen again, like, it's quite rare. I don't think it will, but if there was another chance, I'd hope that I would be able to relax a bit more and be able to just have a conversation without kind of. But it was crazy. Anyway, there's tons of people there. It was so hard to even have a proper conversation. So I'm kind of beating myself up that I should have been like being able to kind of
Well,
communicate better. But
I think it's a fear though, because like a lot of people, myself included, you get in these situations. I get to travel here and there to conventions or cons, and you get to meet these one or two artists or personalities, and the entire time you're like, all right, if this is my one chance to make an impression, don't say something like, hey, I don't really know your full name or anything, but I really like, I really like horchata. Oh, that's cool.
yeah,
And it's just like, all right, don't say something stupid to her. You're like, yeah, I really think you're hot. And you're like, oh, fuck, I said, no, oh, God. Uh,
whoops.
yeah. Oh, hey,
Mm,
honey, I swear to God, I didn't mean it.
yeah.
But no, I genuinely get it, because I think the best thing, though, like with Simon Pegg, he's somebody I love reading about, because he's genuinely, from what I understand, one of
Mm,
the artists that you see in cinema that can make an influence on the common man or the everyday person,
yeah.
because they're not the Brad Pitts, so to speak, but they are very much the people who are enthusiastic about the true art form. Whether you think it, whether you as a person see that or think it, but they go out of their way to, like J.J. Abrams, or even now more so with like some of the heads of the Disney department for Marvel. Like you see them, and they genuinely, like, if you're gonna have something that's gonna strike people and be artistic, you need to have something that's gonna strike people being artistic.
Hmm.
And I always think that's an important thing, and I think that you will go further with that, because you have too many creative people with things around you, and possibilities, to not notice and be like, you know what, I really would love that, because it doesn't matter how much money or how high or low your status is.
Mm,
There are a lot of people at high status, Simon Pegg being one of them, for the sake of conversation. It's look at, like, I'm looking at your Monty Python and the Holy Grail and be like, oh my God, I love that movie. Oh my God, it's a poster. Who created the poster? You know what I mean? And
mm,
it hits that chord. It hits that personal chord with somebody, and that will always carry. And it's nothing to anyone that does. I don't want to say Photoshop art, because there are people who draw in Photoshop, but people who do photo mashes, I guess the way would be to be said. When you're just kind of cut and pasting photos together to make a poster, I don't doubt that it would be cool for somebody, because I mean, we've all had those weird posters in our room once in a while, but
hmm.
I don't think it'll ever impact somebody as much as something that's been given a time, effort, and like a deliberate attempt to bringing it to life.
Mm.
So, how did you move from that point with Drew to actually getting in cahoots, so to speak, with all these companies? Because, as you said, Drew had mentioned that the computer is kind of taking all the work.
Yeah.
Did you from that point? Were you doing anything? Were you thinking of doing anything digital, or was it kind of like a natural transition to kind of find your
Yeah,
footing?
at that point, I was still. I mean, I'd had a dabble, but not to any degree of amazingness. It was just. It was like the software wasn't ready yet
Mm-hmm.
to simulate real media. Um, so I was still doing things on artboard with acrylic, airbrush, and Prismacolor pencils. That was my thing. That's what I did, and I do um, little things for people. I was just trying to get work all the time. I ended up starting a full-time job, and then because obviously you have to pay the bills, and so it was a case of in my spare time would I had to figure out how to get some kind of portfolio. I mean, the thing is, you graduated from university. I don't know what it's like today, but when I was there, you get your degree and you're like, off you go, and you don't know what the heck to do. I think one of the lessons we had was like maybe telling us that we needed to submit folios to a load of um, art or children's book publishers and all these kind of things. So that's the first thing I did. It was like almost done about 50 different. Got prints of my work done, letters written, um, put them all in envelopes, sent them all out, and then wait. I mean, it was just, and this is 1997. And it was like, so you're just waiting and waiting, and then you get a reply back. You're like, oh, yes, I got a reply in the mail. And it'll be a bog standard letter saying, thanks very much for your submission. We'll keep you on file, pretty much. And you're just like, oh, okay. Well, maybe the next one will be different. But no, the next one's the same. And the next one, and the next one. And it just kind of like, some of them didn't even reply to you. And it was actually very disheartening because you kind of, you get your work up to a standard where you're thinking, I'm ready. I think I'm ready. This is it. I've done school, college, university. Now I'm in the big wide world, and people are going to see what I can do, and they're just going to give me loads of work. And it just, for me anyway, didn't happen that way. So it was very much in up, and just you just try and all you can do is try and sell your wares in a way to kind of try and get your work seen by the most amount of people. And before the internet came out around, it was very difficult to do that, unless you had a rep who would take your book to various clients, and they would have a look and say, "Yeah, we think that's the right person for this job," and then you get some work. But if you didn't have a rep, I don't think you had a chance, really, of getting seen. Or if I did adverts in this magazine called Creative Review, which is over here in the UK. I did loads of adverts in there. I don't think I got anything back from that. And it was like trying to find a way of communicating yourself, which is actually I find it very difficult to be able to promote myself in a way that appealed to clients. So and no one's there's no there's no there was no lesson that I'd ever had that would teach me that. So it was a trial and error thing. So I was like trying as many things as I could to try and promote what I really wanted to do, and it was just failing. Um, and and then one day, I'm trying to think what came first. Something happened. Basically, I designed the internet kind of was happening by this time, and it was like uh, it, I designed a website, and I had a little portfolio website, and I put a few things on there. It was very basic and very kind of, but somehow Penguin Books saw it, and they got in touch, and said, we're doing this series on, this is Penguin Books in New York, and they were doing a series for Gunsmoke, which is the longest running American TV show at the time. It was. And they were doing a book series, and they wanted some illustrated covers, and I was like, sounds good. And the question they asked was, can you work digitally? And at this point, I wasn't working digitally, and I just said yeah, because I I didn't have much professional work coming in, really. I think there was a case. This was like one of the biggest things that ever happened. So I said yes, and then I went out and bought a copy of Painter straight away and started trying to figure out how to do what I do traditionally and see if I can pull it off in this application, this program, this software. And so I didn't have much time, but I figured out a way of working in layers, with an underdrawing first and then color, and then, the same techniques, same traditional techniques, but using digital paint and digital pencils. And they liked it, and it worked. And I did about 5 or 6 covers for them.
At this time, did you actually have like a tablet, or how did you go about that? Because you said you weren't really.
Well, I had a computer,
Mhm.
which I think I probably played games on it more than anything, but it was more of a communications tool at the time, and also to do my website. I needed something so I could do a website, and so I had a scanner and and the I think it was iMac, my first computer, one of those blue see-through ones, and so it was a case. I had that, and then I went out and bought a Wacom tablet for the first time, and I do remember it taking quite a bit of hand-eye coordination down when using the Wacom tablet. So looking at the screen, the tablet was so alien because I was so used to having, if you're drawing on paper, obviously the marks you're making are right there. Whereas
Right.
this was like you're making marks over here and they're appearing on the screen in front of my eyes. This is weird. Um, it was a real. I think every digital artist has been through that at some time. But yeah, it was kind of a strange experience. But I persevered with it, and it came through, and it worked. And then, um, actually, a friend of mine from art college, um, I'd started working for GQ magazine. She was like assistant art director, I think, at GQ magazine in London.
Mm-hmm.
And she got in touch and said, we're doing this movie thing every month with one of our writers called A. Gill, who's he's actually more well known for restaurant reviews, I think. But he's doing this segment every month. We're going to be doing it. It's his take on movies, and we'd like an illustration for each one. I was like, okay, sounds good. Let's do it. And so I had a regular spot in GQ magazine for, I think, probably a couple of years. It went on for. It was quite a while. I did lots of illustrations of A. Gill because he wanted him. He wanted himself in every illustration. So he was, you know, he was Superman at one point. He was, I don't know who else was he. He was everybody. Even oh, I can't. My brain's going blank at the moment. But he was. I basically drew A. Gill as lots of famous celebrity movie stars for this article. Even like playing death at chess, in the old movie. Oh, my brain! What time is it? My brain's shutting down on me.
Don't
Um,
worry, man.
yeah, no. So yeah, that was a nice steady job. Um, and then from there, it was the case of like my website would grow. I had more work to show, and I was starting to be able to promote it a little bit. And I'm trying to think what was the first kind of social network thing. You know what? I can't remember. I actually didn't really join social network till about 2008 properly. So it's just websites. It was like emailing people and trying to get the word out.
Let's talk about some of the covers actually, because some of the covers that you've done and some of the artwork you've done, like you said, you started doing these jobs to get yourself more acclimated to the profession. When did you start doing more digital to physical? Was it because of the workload, or did you try to find like a happy even medium?
It was actually the clients were preferring it. They would ask for digital. So I I kind of thought, well, you know, it I'm getting as much I'm having as much fun doing this digitally as I was painting traditionally. That was one thing. The other thing was the clients were liking it more. I could make changes quicker for the clients. So they would say, "Oh, can you redo that part of the illustrator or whatever it was." I was able to then modify my illustration a lot faster because I didn't have to repaint the artboard. I didn't have to then remix the colors of the ink or, it was just taking less time. So the clients were happier and I was actually getting a kick out of it. I was kind of, because I didn't go to any classes or anything to learn how to do it. It was just using my traditional knowledge and looking at what I had in the computer and going, right, what's the best pencil that this software shows me? What's the best airbrush? What's the best kind of the thing that would give me a sense of fulfillment? It was all about it was fulfilling my personal, soul. Like that's one of the things that drives us as artists is the feeling you get from creating something. And if you don't have that feeling, you're likely to keep creating things. You're just going to go, well, that's not for me. I'm going to go and try something else.
Mm.
So when you find something that you get this constant, that's why I painted. That's why I followed illustration, because I got this great feeling inside me whenever I finished something or when I was doing something. So when came time to do it, feeling as I was doing it traditionally, which was a surprise. I wasn't sure if I would, but I did. So it didn't affect me. I didn't look at it and go, well, that's better than that. To me, it didn't matter how I was doing it as long as I was doing it. So, there are people that kind of turn their noses up at digital illustration, like, oh, it's digital or whatever, it's not traditional.
Right.
And, it's true, there is only one original, but there's only one original file too.
That's true.
Really, I don't usually, there's a effort that goes into these things.
Yeah.
Then you don't just press a button generally and it happens. There's thought and there's consideration and there's technique and then there's drawing and painting and knowledge. All these things come together to create something, whether it's on paper or on a computer. And it's the same, for but people say Photoshop as if it's a dirty word, and it's really not.
No.
It's the most it Photoshop is the most amazing program, really, that was probably ever created. Really, it's just so it can do so many things. But I mean, I use Photoshop to do my compositions, and now I use Photoshop to do my final illustrations. Everything's in Photoshop these days.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm composing the image in Photoshop. I'm actually rendering the image in Photoshop. I'm painting in Photoshop. Everything's under one roof. Whereas before I'd have Coral Painter and I'd have other things, and I'd be like trying to make it all happen. And now it's mostly Photoshop. But you know, Photoshop really came into its own for me when, as soon as I realized that someone had created some decent brushes, and as soon as that happened, and that those brushes, by the way, are the Kyle Webster brushes, KyleBrush.com. There's a little plug for him, but he doesn't need the plug because he's doing very well. But his 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 brushes really opened up Photoshop for me. Before that happened, I was using all sorts of different software, from Sketchbook Pro to like Procreate on the iPad, and
Mhm.
Sketchbook Pro on the iPad, and lots of other applications on the main computer as well to try and emulate this traditional look, including Corel Painter, which I ended up ditching eventually because it was just too redundant. It was just so frustrating to use in the end. Um, Anyway, but yeah, Photoshop has been not a dirty word, folks. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, I also believe that, art is subjective, and a lot of artists that are trying to, I guess, take in a form of critique or a form of, because like you said, every artist at some point or another wants to have their ego stroked or
Hmm.
be able to hear some kind of, I guess you could say, like some kind of acceptance of their work. But then when you hear people and they're like, oh, I I do something in Photoshop, or I did something in the digital, or I did it just in acrylic or oil. Somebody's
Hmm.
always has something to say about that specific medium. Someone
Hmm.
has something to say about traditional versus the new school way of doing things, and I think it's one of those things that I forget who it was. It was um, Neil Adams that
Hmm.
was on a fellow podcast, and he's a very famous writer and illustrator for DC Comics. And he said
Yeah.
the best advice I can ever give anyone is to never ever listen to your friends. He goes, never your artist, fuck them. And the guy goes, well, you're like, how could you say that? And he goes, it sounds mean. He goes, it really sounds mean. He goes, but let's be honest with ourselves. You all have an idea as artists what you want to do. And every time you ask somebody for their opinion on what you should do, you're not really asking what you should do because you want to do what they do. You're asking because you want to be affirmed that you're either doing it right or wrong. And it goes
Hmm.
90% of the time, those people's points of view will never ever match your own. Yes,
Hmm.
there may be something you can work on. Maybe there's something that can be corrected. He goes, but it's never necessarily the same point of view. Unless you're sitting in that chair looking through your eyes, it is never your point of view. And
Yeah.
you will never learn exactly what you want to do personally if you're letting other people dictate 100% what you should do. To take away from something and learn or take little bits here, critique versus criticism is fine. He goes, but don't ever let somebody just crash and take the wheel and crash and burn, because even if it is successful, you didn't learn that all on your own, or you didn't figure it out, like, you know what, this is gonna, I finally did what I wanted, and then you look at it in the final piece, you're like, wow, I don't like it, or you know what
Hmm.
I mean. And I do genuinely believe that when you're talking about the whole idea of people looking at Photoshop as a dirty word, or people physical versus digital, it's so true, because I've known quite a few that are like, if you work in a digital medium, that's just a disgrace to the masters. But the masters, on the opposite end, whoever those masters in your book may be, at one point, like, let's even go all the way back to Da Vinci or Raphael, they were creating new techniques that nobody back then who were already
Yeah.
doing art and teaching them were doing, and therefore it was
New technology.
yeah, it was, and it was atrocious because that's not how it used to be.
Yeah.
And the thing to keep in mind for anyone out there is, like, there is that famous saying of, like, learn the basics, learn everything you can about art, and then just disregard it. Learn what you need, and then just do your own thing. And
Hmm.
if you are curious about digital, if you're curious about physical, I'm sorry, like, merging the two
Traditional.
both,
Yeah. Oh,
do
of
it.
course.
Yeah, do
Yeah.
it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, I've said this to a few, I mean, it comes up in conversation quite regularly, and I've come to the conclusion. I came to the conclusion a few years ago. Really, you know, before paint was in tubes, the artist had to grind, you know, stuff to make the colors and put like liquids with it and gel mediums to then be able to paint. Then, you know, they developed tubes of paint. This isn't chronologically historically correct, by the way. But you know, it's like the technology has a way of moving forward, and you know, it's all about new tools, new ways of doing things, and I I reckon if let's like you mentioned Leonardo da Vinci, let's say he was around today,
Right.
he would be so embracing it that he would be like loving it. I reckon he'd be playing with it and like doing things that no one would ever seen before and pushing things forward. You know, and it's something that can be either embraced or not. But I think, you know, it's there to be embraced. It's a tool you can create with it. I've had quite a bit of success creating the style of artwork that I want it to be over the years. I've really enjoyed being able to create using the computer, and it's, you know, technology with even social media, for example, has come on leaps and bounds and opened things up to new audiences. It's a completely different world today. And if you were to ignore technology, geez, where would we be? I just think you can't really beat a pencil and a paper, but you know, you the technology, the software that's available, you can create. You know, I have a screen, like a 27-inch screen that I can draw on, like on the screen with touch sensitivity, and it is the closest thing to drawing on paper. I mean, I've had it maybe a year and a half, 2 years now, not that long.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a demonstration of one. They brought one round so I could check it out, and because I wasn't sure it'd be really good or not, and it was just it was compared to just using a regular tablet, it was just completely different. It was a completely different experience. The hand-to-eye coordination's back. You know, you're like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
this is, you know, it's amazing. Um, you know, so even the hardware available is coming up, like the iPad Pro with the pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in some respects, that pencil and iPad Pro is more is leaps and bounds on the Wacom tablet, really,
Oh
on the
yeah.
Cintiq.
Yeah.
You know, it's a completely different. It's like a step closer to something. You know, it all the time things are changing, and to be able to use that technology and create something beautiful from the technology is it's wonderful. And so, you know, the I reckon I could any master painter from the past, if they came to the future in a time machine, they would be, you know, all into it. I think they would love it.
You're
Once you show them, like if you just gave them an iPad with a pencil, you said, "Look, you can paint on this,"
yeah.
you know, they'd be like, "No way!" And you know,
Don't
and
use
you
that
can,
chisel. Ah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
hit my screen.
It's not that kind of tablet, dude. uh, yeah,
No, but you're so right because that's I think that's like the best. I don't want to say argument because it's not necessarily an argument, but it is very true that um, they were innovators. You know, they
yeah,
were people that were looking at the next newest thing to not necessarily make it easier, but in the same sense, make it easier because they were trying to
yeah.
find what was not the norm.
Well, exactly. I mean, look at the projectors. I mean, the projectors back in the day, like,
It was an Oculus Majora, correct?
yeah, yeah, or yeah. I just saw one the other day. I was there. What's it called? I know what I'm thinking about, but I just can't say it in whiz. Camera Obscura.
Cameras,
There you go.
thank you.
Um, so you know, back in the olden days, you know, great master artists. I mean, like even up to the, you know, recent great artists like, as you know, like Norman Rockwell.
Mm-hmm.
He used a projector at times, and it was just something that would help with the composition. It was a piece of technology that would help him achieve something, help him achieve the end goal, the end result. And that's all. That's all I look at this technology as. Really, it's a way of me achieving what I want, in a way that is acceptable by the people that require the artwork as well. They love that it's digital.
Yeah.
Um, it you know artwork is, most of the artwork's probably seen digitally more than in print anyway now.
Yeah.
So if you can have the colors all correct, everything as it should be, um, while you're doing it, you don't have to worry about any scanning or, you know, and time, as everyone says, is money. So you're saving time. You don't need to send it out to us. You don't have to wait for the paint to dry. you don't have,
Yeah.
you don't have to send the original to a professional scanner to be drum scanned or flatbed scanned. It's just a case of sticking it on a cloud service and sending them the link to download it, and then you say, "Hey, presto, there you go, and now pay me."
You going back to what you were saying is true. It's like a lot of people don't really know, but like a lot of master painters used the camera obscura. You know,
Mm.
they a lot of famous painters back in the day did
Oh yeah, I
trace.
mean, well, yeah, they would even have, you know, they would make a scene with models and have them standing there, and then the camera would pick that information up and then project it onto the artboard or onto the canvas or whatever they're using.
Hmm.
Um,
And like you said, it has nothing to do with the idea of like because yet again, you know, speaking about the Neil Adams interview that was on Fat Man on Batman podcast, Rockwell faced a lot of critique and criticism from other fellow artists in his company when he first started, before he actually became the Norman Rockwell we know, because he
mm,
worked from photographs.
yeah,
And you know the main thing he said was, you know, from the masters all the way down to the legends, you get to a point in your career, especially because most of these people were either hired guns for paint massive paint projects, or they were illustrators. And
mm,
you know, you understand this yourself professionally, that you're put in a position where you're basically having to paint against the clock, you're having to
mm,
illustrate against the clock. And are you going to work to pride, or are you going to work to process? You know, are you going to do something that's going to make your time a little bit easier and well maintained to make sure that
yeah,
it gets done, versus the person that's just like, well, you know, I did the perfect circle 400 times and you can't even tell that one of these heads is me. But
yeah.
it's true. But going back to the idea of like how technology progresses, very respectfully out to my girlfriend. Yesterday was my birthday, and
Oh,
her
happy birthday!
thank you, man. That's why I had wrote it on the Instagram feed where I was like, oh, it's like a birthday wish come true. But then I don't really talk about my birthday in general, like to friends. So I was like, oh, you know, I'm just not gonna say anything. But her and her mother were very awesome, and I've been saving forever, and they ended up getting me a Cintiq QHD 27. And
Oh, nice.
I've never in my life, you and Vlad Rodriguez are probably my top two when it comes to digital art. Just because your textures, your grittiness, and all the illustration you do. And then I go ahead and I sit down on this thing, and I've never used Photoshop. I've heard the whole argument, which we'll get to real quick, about like, you know, don't use Photoshop. You got to use Illustrator. Then you hear people that go, don't use. Why are you using Illustrator? You need to go to Photoshop. Illustrator is
Yeah,
just a
this
name.
is the funny thing. Like, you know, just because you're an illustrator doesn't mean you need to use Illustrator. Because, you know, vector graphics is it's a whole nother ball game. It's whole completely different. I mean, yeah. I mean, there are artists like Mexifunk,
Hmm.
a good friend Orlando. He's like kind of pushing the boundaries of vector illustration in a way.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, he's doing stuff that not many people are actually doing. Right? But But I used to use Illustrator a lot. I've designed things on Illustrator. I've, illustrated things on Illustrator, but it's not, to me. I it doesn't feel like I'm drawing or painting. It's something completely different. It's almost more technical. It's more, um, straight lines, and you can scale it up to the size of a building, and you're never going to lose any detail, which is fantastic. But I I never really got the same degree of kick out of using Illustrator to create an illustration.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why my my digital illustration harkens back to my traditional illustration, because that's the stuff that floats my boat.
Right.
That's the stuff that I get a kick out of, and that's the kind of stuff that I really want to do. So, which is why my portfolio looks the way it does, because that's the kind of stuff I enjoy, and that's the stuff that gives me the most satisfaction. Yeah. So, but yeah, the Cintiq. It's an amazing piece of kit. I mean, it's just like, I'm looking at your picture right now. It's like that is a very awesome gift. You have some very lovely people.
Oh yeah, I'm not
in your life, my friend.
I'm definitely not worth it, but I'm very grateful. Speaking to you now, I mean, is such a Christopher Nimchin, who's very awesome. He's always on the message board for the live chat. He he keeps saying jokes back and forth. He also wants to know what's your favorite sport, by the way.
Okay. I don't really have a favorite sport. I don't really follow sport. It's not something that I take time in my life to actually follow and devote myself to. I enjoy playing sports, which I don't do very often either, but I do like playing sports. If I was to say any sport, it'd probably be it'd be more of a team, because I grew up going to football matches with my dad and my granddad. So Manchester City is the team I support and have done.
I'm sorry, we both called it because we both said, well, soccer over here, but yes, football. And we're like, yeah, because of
Football.
Manchester. So yeah.
Yeah, Manchester City. There you go. I mean, when I was growing up, Manchester United was the greatest team on earth. But my whole family have always supported Manchester City through thick and thin. So
he says,
if anyone asks, that's who I support.
He says,
Not that.
Oh, I'm sorry. He said, "Oh, thank God, I identify with him even more now." That's right.
Cool.
But like I said, it really pushed me, because there are certain things, and I think Vlad was one of the ones. Vlad Rodriguez. He used to be known as Pixel Domestico.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
I
just
know Vlad.
okay. So like,
Yeah.
you see his stuff, and talking to him, the few kind of times I have, he has the iPad Pro now, and I've been here, and
Yeah.
you're completely right. The iPad Pro, in my opinion, is just so much more convenient because of being able to zoom in and out, and the pen is extremely reactive, and there's not 1,500 buttons as or options. But the Cintiq as well is specifically made for that purpose of illustration or animation. And the main thing to take away from it is, like, I've seen yourself, um, I've seen yourself, I've seen Vlad, I've seen Josh Bodwell, I've seen a bunch of other people, and you're all doing the same amount of badassery that you do with your paintings, but sorry, that you do with like a Wacom or a Cintiq on an iPad. And it goes right back to what you said. It does not really matter the hardware. I mean, it does make it easier. It is very efficient. I mean, using a bamboo tablet, which are the entry levels, versus a Cintiq is a giant difference. But
Oh yeah.
I've also seen artists like Ben Oliver use, and the artistry has to be learned. It has to be there. You have to have that technique
Oh
first.
yeah. Just because, if you know, uh, if if you don't have that fundamental knowledge, you know, drawing a picture in the sand with a stick, because you know you it takes, a certain amount of effort. People say people are gifted. I'm not actually sure about that. I think it's more about what drives a person and what interests a person, that then they will follow that dream, and over time learn and get better and improve. And sometimes you meet people and they see what you do, and the first thing they say is, "I can't even draw a stick figure." Well, you're just like, well, you have to kind of have some kind of, you have to kind of devote yourself to something to get to a certain level at it. It's like driving a car. You don't automatically know straight away how to do it. You have to learn how to do it.
Right.
And then if you love driving, one day you may become a racing driver, or you may become, I don't know, something along those
A
lines. But
getaway
you just,
driver.
or a getaway driver, even more exciting. Uh, but it is very much like you need the knowledge, you need you need to, first of all, you need to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, then you're not gonna want to do it again. And if you enjoy something, and if it's in your heart as well, you have to follow your heart. I to be I mean, I give this advice out a lot. I get quite a few emails from younger artists that want to be doing illustration, and they want to know, they want some advice, one of the pieces of advice is follow your heart, and if you're passionate about it, just keep going. Don't listen to anybody else telling you that you can't do something. If you truly feel it inside you that is what you want to do, then you should do it, and devote yourself to it, and just surround yourself by everything that inspires you, and go for it. Because I've done a few things over the years, like jobs and different things, and nothing's ever felt as fulfilling to me, for me, as creating an illustrated image. um it's just, that's me. I mean, there are other people like me, but not everybody will have that inside them to push themselves to want to do something and follow that dream. I mean, some people start with that and then they'll just give up eventually because it's too hard, or for whatever reason. And those times are there and they are very hard, but it's whether you have the commitment or whether you have the opportunity to push yourself through that and then get through to the other side. Um, and it might not be right for some people to push themselves that much, but for others it is. So some of my friends from art college aren't doing art anymore, they're doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
but they're still enjoying life and having a good time, and they're happy with that. Whereas there are other people like that, just they've tried working with someone else and it's not been for them, and so they keep following their passions and their dreams, and then regardless of whether it's working or not, just kind of always had it there in the background to try and keep pushing forward. And yeah, it's important to try and follow those dreams and stay passionate and
Well,
all the rest of that.
I do believe people hit walls. They hit a wall
Mm,
where they can't figure something out, and you hear some artists that do say, "Well, I can't have anyone else's artwork. I can't have any artwork whatsoever in my studio but my own because I'll be too influenced." And then I've heard other artists be like, "You know what? I'll keep a specific painting." Um,
mm,
Courtney Esfelchen, I believe her name is. She always talks about
mm-hmm.
she has a sergeant painting, like a poster
Mm-hmm.
that's in her room, and she looks at it, and every time she sees it, she goes, "I'm never influenced by the painting itself. The discipline in the painting is what inspires me."
Right.
And I think that people, when they hit those blocks, there's sometimes you realize that no matter how many paintings you may have or not have, or this or that, or equipment, it comes down to,
Mm.
you know what, it's, you just got to get past it or walk away for a few minutes and come back. If you don't feel something, in my opinion,
Oh yeah.
you know, that you're not digging, walk away from it and start something else. You know, you have
Oh,
physical
totally.
projects going on because you have to, but I'm pretty sure there's a point where you're at where you finally have something that you're doing and it looks great, and then all of a sudden you do one or two things, you're like, ah, I just don't want to do it right
Oh,
now.
to me, that's part of the process. Like I spend as much time on something as I do off something. So I'll be working on something solid for maybe an hour or two, and then I'll step away, um, and come back in 10 minutes, and then re-look at it, and then you just see things differently, and you just like, because sometimes when you're so close to something, you start working too much into it, and you're kind of missing the big picture. So you have to kind of go away, come back, look at the whole thing, say, there's something not right here. I don't know what it is. I'll go away, come back, and then usually the moment you see it, you know instantly what you need to do. There's just, you know, it's all part of the process. The walking away, stepping away from something and coming back to it is just, well, it's part of my process. And I know there's a few other artists I've talked to that have that same thing where they just, you know, you look at it for so long, you need a break from it. So then look back at it with fresh eyes and go, right, what do I need to do? This isn't working. Something's wrong. And you get like a bit of inspiration to kind of go, I can see what's wrong now. This, you know, it's glaring at you, the problem. You're like, that's it. I
Yeah.
know what to do.
I've also heard like to be able to take, like, I do it for myself, is where I take photos of my work from just my cell phone, and then I try to
Yeah.
stare at it and do sort of the bird's eye view is what I've heard it's called, because that'll really pick up the subtleties of what is actually wrong versus what you're
hmm
actually seeing.
No, that's good too. I think, you know, saving it to your phone or taking a picture and then referencing it, like, even if you've got a project that's going on for the week and you've got to a certain point, take it with you. So you can just look at it, and just, you know, kind of keep reminding yourself what maybe you need to do next, or what might be wrong with it, or how you can make it better. Or I do that too. I just, whenever I've emailed something, you know, to a client or whatever for them to look at, I save, or I'll look at the email, or, you know, save the image and just, and looking at it and going, yeah, oh, that's great, or no, something wrong, oh, you know.
Yeah. Uh,
But
Christopher said, if you show up to a fair game, you didn't come prepared. Which I said, he said he forgot who had said that, but that is very true. Like if you always go into a situation where you're too sure of yourself, sometimes it just doesn't push you to where you need to be.
yeah, that's true.
Um, let's talk a little bit about technique right now. So,
Okay.
what is it primarily that you use when you are starting a piece, whether digitally, and then we'll talk about physically, because I've seen you do, like, you did a Hellboy piece that you had painted
Oh
and
yeah.
were using Prisma pencils.
hmm Well, traditionally, I use Photoshop. Like, if I'm doing rough sketches, I'll use the iPad. I haven't really done any finished work on the iPad Pro. I've just not been devoted to it as much as I would have liked to. I'd like to play a bit more with it, but um, so like, on the iPad Pro, I'm trying out a few: the Sketchbook Pro, Procreate. There's the Photoshop Drawer, is it something like that?
Yeah,
See,
Photoshop
I don't
Drawer.
even know the name. I don't even know the names of them.
Sketch Club
Um,
is one of them too. Yeah,
I've not tried that one yet. So
it's basically Photoshop for idiots, which works for me because I'm not very smart at
okay,
Photoshop.
but one of the nicest things on the iPad Pro is the Notes application. Um, and sketching in Notes, if you haven't tried it, I recommend it. Doing a sketch in the Apple Notes app is one of the nicest sketching experiences you may ever have on an iPad Pro. There you go. That's a little nugget for you.
I
So
never even used.
yep. Go open Notes, create a
Mm-hmm.
new note, go down to the bottom. There's a little squiggly line. tap on the squiggly line, brings you up a piece of paper, and oh, I'll tell you, it's one of the nicest. That's what sold the iPad Pro for me, because when I played with the iPad Pro, they had no decent software on there apart from the Notes app. So I was like, all right, well, let's do that. And that's what sold it. It was just like the pencil and the iPad Pro in the app was a joy. So anyway.
The drawing with the side of the pencil as well, I think is really nice because it has such a wide range versus the
Oh,
Cintiq Pro.
huge difference. Yeah, completely different drawing experience. But yeah, getting back to the technique on the desktop stuff. I have a Cintiq, just the same as yours, and I use Photoshop to do the compositions, and then I basically you take the compositions as an underdrawing to then effectively trace, just like you would with a projector. So using I also to generate the gesso texture, I um, I have like pre-built um, scans of gessoed artwork that's that's been painted that I use as a layer in Photoshop, and then and then on top of that, Kyle Webster has some impasto brushes now, so you can actually create your own textured surfaces straight in Photoshop now. So that's another thing that I do from time to time. But then basically it's a case of like getting down to it and painting. I just mostly use the Kyle Webster brushes. They're my favorite ones. So there is some amazing um, spatter brushes that he does, which I use to all the time. The pencil that I use that he creates, the best one that I enjoy using the most is called the Animator pencil. Um, I mean, there are a few others that he's done which give you like the feel that you're drawing with the side of the pencil as well. Because I like to kind of have a bit more variation in the strokes. So, like I would if I was using Prismacolors. So the closest thing I can get to that is what I want to try and use. So all the tools I use stem from my knowledge from the love of the traditional medium. So the paint splatter, which is completely random but controlled at the same time, and the pencils, the kind of the opacity of the pencils, so like some color still shows through from underneath, and things like that. Just everything kind of to build this feeling, that the same feeling that I remember as a kid when I'd see a illustrated movie poster. If I can feel even 10% or 1% of that, I kind of know I'm doing something right. So if I don't feel that excitement, I kind of know I'm not quite doing.
The so with like the look that you have in a lot of your pieces, it does have the very the Streisand feel, but completely your own at the same time. A lot of that has that kind of almost 70s blown out isn't the word I'm looking for, but it's the best I can describe. But it's like a
Mm-hmm.
very almost like a very heavy bokeh on the like the spray not the spray paint, but like the airbrush feel.
Yeah.
Does a lot of that without giving away too much magic, as we talked about in the beginning. Um,
Mm-hmm.
does a lot of that come from directional painting, or does a lot of that just kind of come from focusing? Like, because I've heard some people that they love the the texture in the painting because you do a lot of line work that's very sharp, very direct to follow the
Mm-hmm.
face. But then I've also heard other people say like, with their work that they focus a lot on airbrushing, kind of like the painting itself, and then adding the texture on top. If that makes sense.
So say that again.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at your rollerball piece and I'm trying to explain it, but
Rollerball. All right.
I've seen some people where like they'll do very soft airbrushes
Oh yeah, yeah.
underneath, and then they add the pencils really sharp on top to add the texture.
Uh-huh.
As to where other people, they kind of do the texture with the pencil first, and they kind of almost blend and smudge here and there.
I generally do a lot of the painting underneath, and then there's a drawing underneath, there's the painting, and then there's the refinement on the top of the painting usually.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are times where I'll paint over the drawing, like digital airbrush over the top, like if there's to come up, if there's a light behind someone and I want some light coming over the person or over the person's shoulder or wherever it is, just you can't achieve that unless you go and layer on top. So it all depends. Like if I need to silhouette something or mask something, it's a lot easier than getting out some masking film and cutting it all out and off you go. You just you got your lasso tool and off you go. Try it that way. But I'm just trying to think
with
what you do.
with some of the directional lighting that you do and the strokes on your Cintiq, do you use a ruler? Because I up until recently I didn't know, but I ruler to
I did that on a periscope. I was doing this Star Wars illustration for Fandango.
oh, the lightsaber, duh.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
that's right. It's like
My bad.
this is here you go. This is how you do a lightsaber, and I got a ruler and put it on the Cintiq, and then a lot of people don't think of doing that. It's like this is the closest thing you're going to get to like a real drawing experience in a computer, really. So you can use tools like I have rulers and things that will draw circles, like templates, and you can use those things to and put them on your screen and make straight lines if you want to, or circles, or use a tool that you would use on paper usually, and give it a try, because um, there's no reason why you can't. It's just an image, it's a tool for you making whatever you want.
Like,
So yeah,
practicality
when
versus
I did that, and people were like, "Oh my god, I never thought doing that." It's like, well,
well, it is very it's practicality versus physicality. Like you thinking digitally, you're like, oh well, I can just choose a like a straight line tool or something. But
yeah,
it's so true. It's things that you would never just think like, oh shit, I can do that.
yeah. I mean, it was stuff that I wish I could have done on a regular Wacom tablet, and I remember because doing a line actually. Well, it was what was it? It was actually doing a circle. To make a drawing of a circle on in Photoshop, been drawn. Um, so it's one of those things where I tried it on that, but you then have to, because you can't always get it in the right place on the screen, so you'd have to create it as a separate layer and then move it around afterwards.
Yeah.
But then being able to do it on the Cintiq, you can do it straight on the right part of the artwork, and then you're in the flow. You don't want to be keeping to, a lot of people work on many, 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 many layers. They might have, I don't know, 50 layers in a piece when they're illustrating, whereas I do most of the drawing on one layer mostly. It's just because um, unless which is happening over the last few years, people are asking for things to be in layers, which kind of okay, but the composition that you've worked on is, to me, as important as the finished piece. So everything's in its place for a reason, and to give some, sometimes you worry that that composition is going to be compromised by somebody in a design studio side that you've never met, looking at it and going, "Oh, let's move this over here and let's move that there," and
Yeah.
kind of so. But what was I saying?
No,
Anyway, I
just,
can't
no,
remember.
I was just saying it's like using the practical sense of what you do
Mm.
physically as an
No, it's good.
artist versus
Mm.
like a digital.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely doing that on the Cintiq's good. You can, use some old school tools.
I would have never thought in my entire life of the reason why they would do that, as far as, um, having you do something in layers just so they can alter it later on. That's crazy. But I mean, it is a studio's piece if they are hiring you, correct?
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, the other thing is, these days, a lot of art and graphics are manipulated to be used in different things, like header pages on Facebook, or social media images need to be a certain shape in order to work. And there's billboards, there's vertical posters, there's horizontal posters, there's all these different things. So there are points when I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there are some clients in the past who have actually taken the separate elements, not really messed with the design much, but they've actually animated the artwork, the illustrations, which happened. The first time that happened, I think, was for a. I did some artwork for a billboard for season 3 of. Here you go. You ready for it? NTSF SDSUV for.
Wow.
It's on the Adult Swim Network. Uh, and so that was the billboard artwork. But then, in order to promote the show, they actually did a piece, like an animated advertisement, and so they animated the characters and had explosions and all these things going on in this little short clip using the artwork, which is, I'd never really seen them do that before. So that was what they needed them on layers for.
That's crazy.
Turns out, yeah.
Now, when you work for, now when you're working, like I'm looking at the Bad Milo piece, which honestly was such a good movie. Um, it's so stupid, but it's so good at the same time.
Yeah.
But when you're working with a lot of these, because there are artists like, Jason Seiler, and there are artists like that work from viewing. He's a very prominent digital artist as well as physical, but he does this a lot of stuff for like Times Magazine and so forth. He works primarily from, like, he'll see a photo sometimes, but then he's just really good with illustration. And then you have
Hmm.
others like Tony Skalepic, I think his name is. I'm not very familiar with it, but he has stuff like Hot Toys and action figures. And then you have, other
Oh yeah.
artists like Drew, who kind of just draws from memory. When you're working on a piece, do you go and do you do what a lot of us do? Like, do you find reference online, screenshots? Do the studios provide you with special shots, or is it kind of?
Sometimes, I mean, a lot. I'm surprised that some clients don't give you that much. Sometimes they
Mm-hmm.
just kind of expect you to go away and figure it out. But there are some clients that will give you access to lots of assets, which is what we call, like an archive of images. That when, especially for, say, for example, a movie's coming out, and they have lots of still photography moved, and graphics are already done maybe for something, and they have a certain amount of assets that then are sometimes made available to you to then go through and basically absorb it and see what's available to you to then work on an image. Um, I mean, that's one thing that happens. But yeah, I mean, who was it you said who works from memory?
Uh, well, Drew was talking about like the Harrison Ford thing. Like he works a lot from. It was in his book that they covered in the Netflix special that they had, and
Uh,
then there's another one named Antoine. I believe it's Rodriguez or Antoine Cortez, one of the two. I'm sorry if you're listening, dude. I forgot your last name, but they don't have a lot of. They're older cats, obviously, like Drew, but they can see a photo of somebody, and because they're really good illustrative artists, they kind of see in like 4 or 5 images, and then their claim and their process to them is that they can just draw somebody from any point of view because of the understanding of bone and facial and muscle structure, which I've met quite a few artists that have said that that's primarily what they do.
Hmm.
which is cool either way. But I asked just because looking at a lot of your reference, I try to search, like I'm looking at a Star Trek piece,
Hmm.
and I've seen some of the images that I'm like, okay, I can see where maybe you've gotten that, whether it be from the movie or online. But then there's other ones where I'm like, God damn, that's really beautiful, and there's no way in hell I could have found reference for that. Um, so so that's the reason why I ask, is because I think a lot of people genuinely wonder, and kind of surprising, like you said, that some clients won't give you a lot of reference if
Hmm.
if you work from like a memory, or if you work from reference that is provided for you, but you kind of already went over with that.
Oh yeah, I'm not that talented that I can work from memory. I think you are some kind of prodigy if you really can do that. I think you probably said about people being gifted.
Yeah.
Maybe they are gifted. Um, yeah, I need reference. I think I could do a rough sketch, and you could probably say, yeah, that looks just like Darth Vader. but but if you compare it to an actual image of Darth Vader, you'd be like, it's not quite there, is it? Stuff like that. But I could draw Harrison Ford, and you kind of go, yeah, it kind of looks like Harrison Ford. And then you put a picture of Harrison Ford, then you're like, no, it doesn't really look like Harrison Ford, does it? But because you kind of use your skills to kind of get a message across. So you do, whether it's the clothes they're wearing or how they're stood, or you know, um, yeah. I
So
mean,
is
reference to me is key. I think in order to get a likeness the way and being having access to assets and to be able to choose. I mean, assets aren't always available, so you have to do a lot of research, and um, you're on Google, you're on different places that offer the services that have images that you can buy credits for and get them. And it's kind of it's a lengthy process, the whole research part,
mhm.
trying to track these images down, because I've got reference books as well, so I'll go through reference books. I've got movie books, and I've got photos I collected from movie memorabilia fairs, and I've got an archive of things that I have access to. But the main thing is trying to find something that people maybe not seen before, or is totally reminiscent of that character, because there are pictures of characters or people that might not quite have a feeling of the character or a feeling of the story, or not going to help fulfill this project brief. And so it's a case of whittling down and going through and spending time and looking at images, and that's, to me, that's another skill. It's like it's something that I'm able to do fairly well, is find images that work well together and just somehow make it work. So
So when you're working on Tyrion Lannister on your Game of Thrones, you have the singles that you did for HBO.
mhm.
A lot of these, you say that you work in one layer, so like you'll do a primary sketch, and you kind of just do you do what some like traditional oil painters would do, where they or illustrators that they kind of make the sharp shapes of the face, the head, and then you start building on top of that um, through I don't want to say layers, but like you keep building on top of it by just adding texture here and there, kind of like a value scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of doing it. And yeah, some of them are done that way with different amounts of airbrush kind of paint over the top. I mean, sketch first, then paint, and then more sketching over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes depending on the time scale as well, but the original composition is right at the bottom of the deck. So um, you're kind of painting over your composition, and you're making it look like um, I'm giving away magic tricks now. I didn't
Oh
want to
no,
do
I don't
this.
want you to go too deep. But
Ah.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's
I
kind
like
of
to
it's
keep the
not
magic
it's
in
not
there.
it's not really a magic trick. It's basically you've worked up the composition that would never existed before.
Mm-hmm.
You're then using that composition to then create more magic by um
Adding elements.
yeah, I mean, there's style and the aesthetic and all these things the that I've kind of you pick up over years of doing things. You know, the way things look. The end result is always like the most. If I'm not getting there, it's like I'm doing something wrong. So I'll just constantly keep at it until I'm satisfied to a certain point, and I'm like, yeah, I'm happy with that. Or, you know, I mean, there are jobs where you're like, I'm not so happy with that one, but, you know, they're not paying me very much, or, you know, it's one of those things. I'll let it go.
Yeah.
And you probably won't see those on my website or something. They're just, you know, but, yeah, I'm actually, incidentally, on my Instagram feed, there is a picture of, that I took in Drew's studio in there. I don't know if you've seen that.
I actually haven't, but I will look at it after we're done.
Okay. Um, yeah, but, no, I mean, there's not really much else to it, really, other than I think it's really to do with aesthetics
Yeah.
and what you what really kind of flicks your switches and pushes your buttons and floats your boat, that kind of thing. Like if I'm working on something I don't get a feels for, then it's not, you know, I need to change it. Or you basically, I mean, I basically work on feelings a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I think that's what it probably comes down to.
With your composition, like, what is the one thing that you try to focus on, as far as, like, for a lot of your pieces, they have a really strong presence to them. Um, do you, especially like if a studio, if you can say, if a studio goes off of like, hey, this is the synopsis of the story, or characters, this is the main one, do you kind of have to go by what they tell you, or is it just something that you use off of like intuition to kind of create the layout?
Well, I mean, it depends on the story. It does depend on the story. So having a synopsis or even access to the movie itself to watch, or a chat with someone who's involved in the the making of the film can help massively. But for the most part, you are kind of relying on your instincts as far as being able to decipher who is who and who is of importance, and also there are stipulations, like contractual stipulations, that you may need to adhere to, like this actor is has to be the most prominent, and then this actor has to be 70% size of the first actor, and then the third actor has to be 50% the size of the first actor. And that's because that's what they agreed in their contract when they signed to do the film. And if you are, for example, what was it now? There was something to do with, I did a piece of artwork for Misery for a DVD or a Blu-ray slipcase
With a
type thing.
typewriter, correct?
Yeah, and the thing with that was, I can't remember how it's worded in the contract, but basically we weren't allowed to use the likeness of Kathy Bates and
James can.
James Caan, yeah, and but there was something in there that did say, if you use that likeness, then you have to use, if you use that actor, then you have to use this actor as well. But due to, like, I think, I can't remember now, but basically the client didn't want to use the likenesses, so I had to kind of come up with something where, you know, there was no there was no people in the poster and the artwork for the film. So it was a case of trying to come up with something that was reminiscent of the film. But I mean, so many of them, the art that I do is, you know, it's predominantly people. It's focused on people. It's focused on characters. It's focused on the people in the film. So when a client asks you not to do something that you're actually enjoying and like doing, which is people, you're like, oh, okay. you kind of have to think out of the box, and you have to kind of try and come up with something conceptually that's different, that can still get the feeling of the film. And I mean, luckily that was an old movie that people who are going to buy this DVD already know. Really, I don't think many newcomers would be like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, a typewriter film." Um, so it's another little challenge. I mean, there's been a couple of things like that, and you have a few like. There's always I really like the collaboration, working with clients and whether it's speaking to them on the phone or by email, just kind of getting the feedback and hearing what they have to say about something, and then making changes. And that whole journey can sometimes be very frustrating, but it can also be very insightful and very interesting and very exciting at the same time, because you are slowly getting to a point where everybody's going to be happy with this, and everyone's going to. This is you're on a journey together, and I really like that aspect of the job as well. It's the fact that you can um, work hand in hand with other people, because so often, you're in a studio on your own, you're not talking to anybody. Thank God for social media. Sometimes kind of keeps you sane, but just having a chat with a client for 20 minutes about something can be the highlight sometimes of your day if you're struggling with something as well, and you're waiting for feedback, or to be able to talk them through what you're working on, and then also hear what they have to say about it and their thoughts and feelings. It can be you know very good. I love that collaborative experience. So
Nice.
mm,
I have two questions here. I think huge fan of yours as well, and this dude has been around since I actually he was one of the first artists that ever followed me, and I thought it
oh
would
yeah.
be appropriate because not only is he a giant fan of yours and the masters of the your TV and so forth, but he's
Hmm.
also for Paul. Aside from the obvious inspirations that I think a lot of us pop culture fans have, like poster artist Struzan and Amzel,
Hmm.
are there I'm sorry. Are there more? Let me move this mic over here because I can't see. Uh, are there more unconventional things that inspire your art, or at least light a fire under you creatively? Photographers, sculptors, maybe even musicians.
mm, that's a good question. There are lots of things actually. One of the things is music. Music is an important part when I'm working and even when I'm not working. So, but yeah, inspirationally, music is one. I have a huge soundtrack collection. You know, inspirational, calming, exciting, gets you all these things. Um, but yeah, film music. I also am a big fan of all different kinds of music. I mean, one of my favorite bands is the Dave Matthews Band, actually, which um, I got into on that trip around the West Coast back in '97. The person who was driving the van had it on, and from that moment on, I've been kind of following that band, listening to all their music. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, from uh, it's there's too many to list. But that music is huge. What else inspires me? I mean, the art. Yeah, like the art of the film posters. The Drewsters and Amsel, Bob Peak, you know, and so many more as well. They that's always an inspiration to me. But even like the artists like of today, some of my friends even that I've got to know over the years, their work is really inspirational, and people like who does a lot of Batman work and stuff. Armando,
Oh,
he's
his book just came out too, right?
yeah, yeah, brought a book out, and also Jason Edmiston brought a book out, and they're both amazing. I have both of them. They did totally recommend anybody who's into illustration and comic books and pop culture art to grab those. But yeah, I mean, you sometimes just a little look on Instagram can be inspirational sometimes, or I mean, there's people's writings that I find inspirational. There's a guy called Alex Mathers who is he's helped me quite a lot. It's just funny, like I'll be thinking something and then he'll write a post and it'll be about what I'm thinking about. So I'm like, uh, and he sometimes answers questions for me. It's like we're on this weird kind of psychic trip where he kind of he just yeah. So I he's become a friend over the years and he's helped me out with a few things career wise, just advice and little bits of information, stuff that sometimes you kind of know, but you're not sure. But he kind of helped me kind of go, yeah, that you're on the right track there. It's what you want to do, or even from a post he's just written or something. There's information in there that, as a creative, any creatives actually, I recommend you follow him. He's on everything. Just type Alex Mathers, AlexMathers, and you will find him. He's very inspirational, very informative. Just I got a lot out of getting to know him and following what he writes, and it's very interesting as a creative person to. He goes through a lot. We all go through on a daily basis, so it's really helpful. Um, but yeah, going back as well, I like to play music and make music whenever I can. I used to play the drums. I don't have a drum kit anymore, but
Nice, man. Same here.
hey,
Yes.
there's so many artists that are drummers. It's uncanny.
It's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, like
Can I ask just from a personal view, what kind of kit were you into?
well, I was a real late starter, and where I lived have a acoustic kit, so I had to have a digital kit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Roland TDK.
20?
I don't know. I can't remember the number now.
Was it a
I don't.
was it a higher end one or was it like a mid grade?
It was kind of mid range. It had the mesh heads,
Okay, so
so
probably
it
a
was.
15 or a
Yeah, it
15
might have
and
been
above.
something like. I don't think it was 20 because I think they were like big budget. I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't have that kind of money. But yeah, I'd be on the drums in the middle of the night. I'd be working on something. I'd need a break. I'd go on the drums and end up, even with even this is how even waking the neighbors up just by just headphones on because of the tapping
The tapping, yeah.
going on, and like I'd get a knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "Do you mind just stopping that for a bit?"
it,
Uh,
it's really cool to hear that though, because personally myself, being a musician for almost 30 years, no, yeah,
wow.
almost around that time. But I mean, like, for doing it for so long, whenever I get frustrated artistically, I'll throw pair of headphones on and I have a
Yeah.
pair of old sticks and I just play on my knee and zone out, and
Awesome.
then I get tired of that,
Yeah.
and then I feel energized. So it's nice to
Oh
hear that
yeah.
I'm not the only crazy
Oh,
one.
it totally is. It is something that has kind of gone hand in hand with creativity. Is
Of
is
course.
even just sitting. I've got a keyboard that I like to play, and so I would just, if I need time out, I just sit at the keyboard and just tinkle away, just making things up, or trying to recreate film themes that I really like. Or yeah, I play everything by ear, so I just kind of like try and figure it out as I go. I don't read music,
Nice.
but yeah, it's really relaxing and it's different. It's kind of it's like a complete change. So from the visual to the auditory kind of change, it must be something to do with that. I'm not quite sure, but there's that break from the visual and then going back to the visual, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, it works, so it's fun.
Nice. He has a second, and probably our last question will be: if you find yourself, as of many creative people do, in a creative rut or maybe simply a plateau, is there something that is your go-to practice to help you get over that? What pushes you forward? Which I'm pretty sure the drum thing kind of covered.
Yeah, we probably just got through that. But yeah, music definitely. I think also don't. I think you shouldn't be afraid of taking a break. If you've got time to, and you're not got a really tight deadline on something, don't. If nothing's happening for you, just go and do something else. Just kind of, or read a book, or watch TV, and I mean, I do that. It's that procrastinating phase sometimes where you just not there yet. You kind of have to mentally prepare sometimes for um to create. Sometimes it doesn't always come. It's not always there. Sometimes it's missing, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But rather than stress out too much about it, which is counterproductive, you need to try and relax and do something and not worry about like that you're not doing it. Like, this is where some people probably have a difficulty understanding this kind of profession, because it's not a 9 to 5 thing. You're not like, you don't start at 9 and finish at 5. Well, I don't anyway. I've tried that and it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's hard.
So some nights I might work through the night, or some days I won't even do any artwork, but I'm thinking about it all the time in my head. I'm just kind of like mentally planning how it's going to work and what's going to go where and do. And and like I said earlier in the conversation, sometimes you go to bed. I'd answer that question is, don't be afraid of taking a break, and because eventually it'll come to you and you'll figure it out.
There you go. Well, thank you, my friend, for making for making the time. You right before we got on here, you were like, "Oh, I'm not really much of a talker, and I don't, I'll try."
I know. Then look what happened.
But it's good though, because like that's the thing I think I hear the most from artists, which really I believe is my main job. I do this for the love. I really love just talking and learning, and it's the only way I'm ever gonna get to meet, like, as you met Struzan. Right now I'm meeting one of my heroes, and it's fucking awesome. No, it's true, man. Seriously, and to find out that you play drums as well, I'm like, oh my god, so fucking sweet.
There's a few. Hey, Nick plays drums too, by the way.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
I smell his drum off. But
and Jock plays drums too.
oh wow, man.
Who else plays drums? There's so many.
I think
we should.
I think we should just start a drum course. Every time something happens, that's how you start talking to each other through paradiddles and patty flop.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But I'm glad, man, because I know you're extremely busy. I know you got more work to do tonight, and shit, we got 2.5 hours out of this, which is great. But coming from myself, who is someone that wants to learn more in cover art and illustrative work, just because I want to do it for myself, and prove to myself that I can be part of something that I've always truly loved. And like you said, seeing how things are going nowadays, not because of the Photoshop word, but the idea of people just slapping things together because they don't want to put the time and artistry into something that they enjoy. And just to hear not only how you started, but how you work and how you think, and just the idea that you're actually a really cool fucking guy always makes it even better to affirm that, anyone listening right now, including myself, there's a lot of not only hope but something to strive for. So I thank you greatly, man.
No, it's a complete pleasure. Thanks
And
for having me on.
It's been
fun.
You may we've been planning this for almost about like 2 months now, just because you've been really busy. But,
yeah.
But is there anything that you would like to share with anybody as far as like final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I would just say, follow your dreams, follow your heart, and listen to your heart as well, and do what basically try your best to lead a fulfilled life by doing that. I think that's one of the keys. And love one another. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's good. No, it seriously is, because you know what? To be honest, right now, with the way, not even being political, not you're across the sea, but there's a lot of craziness going on right now, and sometimes people get caught up in. I believe art, whether it be like you said, whether it be music or physical or whatever you're into, I think it gets you away from stuff.
Yeah.
If everyone kind of did stuff together artistically, I believe Uh, that's kind of hard to say too. But if people got along more artistically, I guess you could say you'd find out how much more you have in common. You know.
Yeah, I mean, we all have a lot in common. We all do, and I think that's um, uh, when you see what's actually going on, it's a real, it's quite terrifying that someone in power is kind of doing what they're doing, and you know, I don't like to say, you know, talk politically. Really, it's kind of it's something that I don't feel like I can make a difference in, and it's just kind of all I can offer really is, and so many of us as artists can offer is an escape maybe, and then I don't know. I really don't know. I think, you know, making things beautiful things is something that's important, but when there is a destroyer out there, then we do have a problem.
Yeah.
But there is always hope.
Always. Yeah. That is not only that's not only a tagline for a Star Wars poster, but that is very much the truth.
Mm.
Um, as for myself, man, and thank you to Josh out there, Josh Bodwell,
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
for
I am
getting
following you, Josh. I didn't realize who you were for a moment. But
um,
yeah.
as always, I hope to get him on here soon as well. But I personally, man, I hope to meet you one day, and I promise I won't draw a portrait of you, but I might draw, but I probably
Yeah.
will draw something for you.
Yeah,
Um,
because when you reverse it around and you think about it, it's like if a fan like came to me with a portrait of me, I'd be like, "What?" It's exactly the kind of look that drew on his face when I gave it to him. So yeah, it's kind of anyone out there who's thinking about doing it for their hero, whoever it may be, then just, you know, maybe give it a second thought.
well, like I said, man, it was a pleasure to have you, brother, and I hope to meet you one day. Only that, I hope a lot of people can really truly appreciate not only the artwork that you're doing, but the road that you've taken to get there. If anyone wants to see any more of your work that may not be familiar with you, but is familiar with the podcast, where can they find your work, yourself, and anything else that may be coming out soon that you'd like people to see?
Sure, okay. You can find me at paulshipper.com or paulshipperstudio.com. And I'm on Twitter at Paul Shipper and Instagram at Paul Shipper. I also have a sketch page on Instagram, which is Paul.Shipper, because one of my Instagram pages got hacked and I
Mm.
started another one. And then I got reinstated, so I went back to the other one. But I've still got the sketchy one now. What else have we got? There's some pretty exciting stuff happening at the moment. I mean, I just did a piece for Empire magazine, which is a tribute to Carrie Fisher, which was
Beautiful.
a huge, you know, a wonderful thing to be asked to do, to honor such a legend, and someone who a lot of us grew up watching on films. Yeah, and so that was huge, and also Empire magazine. I've been a huge Empire magazine my whole sort of since teenage years, and so to be able to work with them has been fantastic, and be actually in the magazine, especially doing it for such a piece, which is a lovely tribute they did. Um, so there's that. There's also stuff for Lucasfilm, which is for the Star Wars celebration, which is in Orlando this April. I've been working on all the badges for the event, and also there is a show poster that I am currently working on. Um, what else? There are other things where I probably can't tell you about. But
It's
yeah,
all good.
that's but yeah, it's I mean 2017 is off to a great start for me on a personal and work level. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting carrying on and keep creating. Hopefully people are enjoying the artwork and seeing it, and yeah, it's wonderful. So I'm very very thankful to be doing what I do.
Awesome. And yet again, for everyone that's listening, like you said, if you guys didn't, obviously you did catch, but if you do need it to be repeated, you can always go to brushesofdoom.com. underneath the blog and or the podcast section where we'll have the episode up for free, Android and or iTunes users, as well as all the links for Paul's projects that he has done, upcoming projects, whatever he has that he will share. And go ahead and go out there and, like he said, be kind, love each other, and do art. You know, if you need to step away for a day or an hour or whatever you can, keep working at it, because like myself as well, I'm ever trying to learn on how to create awesomeness like Paul's, like many of these artists, you know, Jock, Vlad, and it's just persistence. And to have artists that are at such high caliber and high regard, you know, for attitude and technique, to be here and take the time to speak with myself, all of you out there, it's appreciated. But without you all out there to listen, it kind of is in vain. I mean, technically, it's good for me, but it's very much appreciated, and you know, keep striving out there. And Paul, thank you again, brother.
Most welcome. No, it's been good.
And to everyone out there, you can always catch everything that we post on here at brushesofdoom.com, and we will see you soon.
Catch you later.